Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the State Senate Forum conducted by the Greater Burlington Partnerships Government Relations Committee. I'm Brian Bross, a member of the committee, and I will be your moderator this afternoon, and Rachel Lindeen is our timekeeper. A special thank you to our forum sponsor, the Hawkeye. There are two candidates with us today, Tom Courtney and Tim Goodwin. We want to express our gratitude to each of these public servants for their interest in representing our communities in Des Moines. It's not an easy job. This forum will consist of rounds of questions asked by the moderator, to which candidates will have varying times to respond. The order of response will be rotated so that each candidate has the opportunity to be first to answer a question. Candidates have not seen these questions in advance. I do ask the candidates observe the signals from our timekeeper, and stop your response when the time has expired in fairness to the other candidate. Each candidate will have an opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement highlighting his reason for running for office. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will also have a 2-minute closing statement. And so we'll begin with the opening statements, and since you, Mr. Courtney, you're first in alphabetical order, we'll begin with you, and you'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thanks, Brian. I want to thank the partnership for having this forum in these trying times. Forums are hard to do, and I appreciate all the work. My name is Tom Courtney, and I'm running to be your state senator in District 44. I was born in Burlington, actually right in this building, not very far from here. Raised on a small farm near Wapello in Eliza County. I served in the Air Force from 1966 to 72. In 72, I went to work at Case Company and retired after 30 years. I served in several elected positions there. I was UAW production safety rep when I retired. And prior to that, I served as bargaining chair for several terms. I served 8 years on the Burlington School Board. I was elected to the Iowa Senate in 2002 and served until 2016. I was written into the Burlington School Board in 2017, and I serve there today as the vice president. I'm running for election to the Iowa Senate because I believe Iowa can do better than it has in the last 4 years. Republicans have made a disaster of privatized Medicaid. What was intended to save money instead has cost taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. They decimated our state employee unions that have been quite successful since Governor Robert Ray signed them into law years and years ago. They have taken Iowa from the #1 spot in education to about 13 nationwide. I believe Iowa can do better, and I have the experience and the compassion to help make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Mr. Goodwin, opening statement.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the Greater Burlington Partnership for hosting this forum, and for those of you who are watching by Zoom. Also want to thank my wife, Tina, for encouraging me to pursue this wonderful opportunity. As I make my way across Senate District 44 visiting with voters, I often get asked, what makes you run for the Iowa Senate? I'll give you the long answer. I grew up in Danville. My mom was a teacher associate at Danville Schools for 35 years, and my dad was a union pipe fitter. My parents divorced when I was 11 years old, and I had 2 older sisters and an older brother, all school-aged. While my father was out of state, the day-to-day demands of parenting fell on my mother. Child support was hit and miss, and times got tough. My mom took on a second job at a gas station 2 nights a week and then worked every weekend at a grocery store in Burlington. When school was out in the summer, she worked the night shift at what I called the cookie factory, now Shears. She did this for 10 years, not to get ahead, but to try to keep up. The bank foreclosed on her house, and she was forced to make tough decisions. All through this adversity, she never asked for people's pity, and she never expected the government to bail her out. And the most impressive thing was that my siblings and I never felt poor, and that's a testament to my mom. She emphasized to us kids that in order for us to make a better life for ourselves, and I'll say that again, in order to make a better life for ourselves, not expect a better life, that we needed to prioritize education and take that as far as we could. She was the model of consistency and hard work. The reason I told you this story is to show families that are similar to mine when I was younger and struggling financially, especially during these uncertain times of COVID-19, that I've been there and I understand your fears, and you will need someone that has a seat at the table and involved in decision-making process of a Republican-controlled legislature. What I may lack in elected experience, I more than make up for in life experience. And after the curveball that 2020 has thrown you, I'll ask you right now, what's more important at this time for Southeast Iowa? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. And as we rotate, we'll go into the first question. It'll be yours first. How will you support the expansion and updates of career and technical education systems statewide, especially with the new and updated requirements from the federal Perkins program?
Well, I think you asked me, that's to me first, correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
I think we've got a good start with Future Ready Iowa that Governor Reynolds put in several years ago. It's a good way to partner with our community colleges. What a wonderful community college we have here in West Burlington SCC. What a great asset. And so, Future Ready Iowa is beneficial for our state to increase the skill level of our workforce. And we all know that there's a workforce shortage in Iowa, and skilled workforce more than that. We need to prepare these students for 21st century learning skills. So we need to continue to partner with SCC. We need to continue private-public partnership, something that we've been able to do since the times that COVID hit back in March. I think we've done a wonderful job of not just doing it at a federal level, but also at a state level.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Courtney.
Thanks for the question. Problems in Iowa, the Future Ready Workforce is a great idea, but what we're doing in Iowa is we're underfunding education. Every year, education is underfunded. If you ask the average legislator, Republican legislator especially, they will tell you all of the pie of the budget pie, education gets more than half, and that's true, they do. But the size of the pie has decreased and decreased and decreased over the last 6, 7, 8 years. What used to be a much bigger pie is now down to a much smaller pie. Education is not funded. We've not funded even at 2% in the last several years. Several years they've only gotten zero funding, and I think that's wrong. And I think if we do need a better workforce in Iowa, we need a better educated workforce in Iowa. We need people that know how to build houses. We need people that know how to work on things. Not everyone's ready to go to college. And it's my belief that the legislature ought to work together with the community colleges and K-12 education. And we ought to come up with some middle ground, some place for students to go that don't want to go to college, to learn how to do the jobs that need to be done in this part of the state, actually in this part of the world. So that would be my plan. I think Democrats and Republicans can work together and solve these issues. Education is not that tough. It's a little tougher now that COVID's going on, but it's not that tough. And we need to work harder at it, and we need to work in a bipartisan manner, and we need to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. We'll have you go next, or first on this next question. It's a little bit long, so I would ask you both to listen carefully. The state of Iowa started last fiscal year with a $529.3 million surplus, with cash and emergency reserves totaling $766.9 million. And they received $4.26 billion in COVID-19 stimulus aid from the federal government under Section 15,011 of the CARES Act. Forecasters like Moody's Analytics have suggested Iowa will face a tax revenue shortfall this year of between $895 million and $1.14 billion. Do you support using most or all of the surplus and cash reserves to cover the revenue shortfall, or finding new revenue sources through increases on existing taxes or implementing new taxes, and why? Mr. Courtney.
I don't believe in any new taxes. What I do believe we need to do is go back and look at the tax giveaways we're giving to big business in this state. We're giving John Deere millions and millions of dollars a year. We're giving Walmart millions of dollars a year. We're giving numerous other big companies millions and millions of dollars a year. There are large companies in this state that don't pay any taxes. In fact, the state gives them a check at tax time in rebates. We've got to stop doing that. That's where this money could come from. We might not need to get into the surplus. That's where the money should come from. I'm a firm believer in that, Brian, and I think that's where the state needs to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Courtney. Mr. Goodwin?
Thanks for the question. I'm glad you brought that up. So back at the end of July, I think, I don't think it was publicized very well, but the state of Iowa is the most fiscally sound, most resilient state in the country when it comes to paddling through the COVID-19. So the Council of State Governments released this report, and it validates conservative budgeting practices that Senate Republicans have implemented the last 4 years. It weighed several factors, including percent of GDP by industry of state, the expected reduction of state revenues, balance in the state's rainy day fund, which currently sits about $800 million, as you stated. Each state's debt to income ratio, the solvency of each state's pension system, and the state's unemployment trust fund, which currently sits at about $1.2 billion. So it looks like we're going to be just shy of $300 million for what's in our coffers right now. That's fantastic. We're the #1 state coming through this. And so going to taxes, the promotion of growth is the most important tax policy that we can do. Pro-growth tax policy allows capital to be allocated most efficiently and rewards work and investment and creates opportunities for more Iowans. So would I consider using the rainy day fund? I don't think we're going to need to use the rainy day fund. It's there if we need to. I think that maybe there's a question coming up about the Invest in Iowa, but I think that's something that can be talked about at a different time as well. So would I consider a tax increase? The only way I would ever consider a tax increase is if it's a part of a net tax reduction or net tax relief.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. And the next question is another somewhat long question, again, about state spending. Mr. Goodwin, we'll go with you first and then to Mr. Courtney. State spending on education in fiscal year 2020 was over 55.8% of the total budget, while spending on human services was over 25%. Governor Reynolds recommended an increase of 2.56% in education spending from fiscal year 2020 to 2021, while also recommending an increase of 3.42% in human services spending for the same period. Considering that education and human services are the top two spending categories for the state of Iowa, do you support the governor's recommended spending increases? If not, what specific legislative proposals would you present to the Senate Appropriations Committee to address your concerns? Mr. Goodwin.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to what Tom said earlier. I would dispute every single thing that he said about education funding, and I don't think any of his claims can be substantiated, to be honest with you. I'm going to read a few things to you. Since the Republican trifecta, K-12 funding has increased over $300 million, including $26.6 million for transportation equity, over $100 million in new funding for this year, despite the pandemic and financial crisis that we're in. I would say that's promises made, promises kept. The last financial crisis we had in 2009, when Tom was in office under the Democratic trifecta, was the last time school aid to schools was cut at 10% across the board, which is devastating to education. I was a part of that. Probably $600 million at the time. Teachers lost their jobs. I know my pay was frozen for 3 years. It was absolutely devastating to education. And so we were overspending, revenues were less, and that's what got us in trouble. And so do I support the governor's increase in both the Medicaid and mental health side, health and human services in the school state aid? If we have the money, absolutely. They're two of the biggest pieces of the pie right now. And those are two things at the forefront coming through the COVID pandemic.
Mr. Courtney.
I believe that education funding, while it looks like it's increased, pardon me, education funding in the real world has not increased. It looks good. It looks good on paper. It has not really increased. I know, because I work on a school board, I know that we're underfunded every year. And I don't know that the governor's plan for more money next year will ever come to fruition. I don't know that ever comes to fruition. I think that this governor and this as Tim says, trifecta in the Capitol right now of all Republicans is more concerned with tax cuts for the wealthy. I think that's what they do. It shows up in education. It shows up in healthcare in the state. Both areas are suffering. Healthcare is suffering drastically from cuts and cuts and cuts. I believe that the state needs to work harder, taking some of that money away that we've given away in big bonuses for big business and use that in education. We did make cuts back in 2009, cuts that had to be made. Lots of things were going on. Some of those cuts had to be made. Those were devastating times. I believe we need to hang on to our hat because they're coming again. I believe it's going to happen this year. I believe things are going to get worse if we don't turn some of this around in Des Moines.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. And this next question goes to you, Mr. Courtney. Do you support Medicaid rate increases to mental health disability service health care providers so that they can cover frontline staff hazard pay, overtime, and PPE or personal protective equipment costs?
Yes, I do. And Medicaid is mental health is a big deal in Iowa. Years ago, we had four or five mental health institutions in this state. Now we're down to two and kind of sometimes one. People that need mental health wind up getting put in jail while they wait on services. Our prisons have become mental health institutions because there's nowhere else to put those folks. Here in Des Moines County, if we have someone on the street that needs mental health care, they take them to the hospital. The hospital can't usually find a bed because they don't have very many mental health beds. And those people have to be put in a patrol car and taken up to Clarinda, 5, 6, 7 hour drive away in the back of the patrol car. And that all costs us county money. I believe that we need to work with healthcare on a bipartisan manner, work on mental health care, excuse me, to begin to refund mental health. We need more mental health professionals in Iowa, and we need more mental health institutions in Iowa. And I believe that if we do that, we can cut down the money that we need to spend on prisons and county jails and all those kind of facilities. I think this is maybe one of the largest problems in the state, and we're not doing anything about it. Mental health is being pushed to the back burner. I think we need to work in a bipartisan manner to turn that issue around.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Mr. Goodwin.
Could you repeat that?
I sure could. Do you support Medicaid rate increases to mental health, disability, service health care providers so that they can cover frontline staff hazard pay, overtime, and PPE or personal protective equipment costs?
Yeah, so the first time I was asked this, back in the spring, I believe I said no, and that was without having done any research and really looked into it and talked to healthcare professionals. So spent quite a bit of time talking with healthcare professionals. It's something that I'm certainly open to at this point. Talking about Medicaid, the privatization was a hot topic 3 years ago when it came in. I wish it would have been legislated. I wish it would have been able to be debated. But Governor Branstad at the time, did it by executive order. I think we need to focus on improving the current system. You hear politicians and Democrats right now saying that they're running on the fact that they're going to go back to the old system. That's just dangerously simplistic to say. I think part of the problem was we rolled into it too quickly, and we rolled into it in too many areas too quickly instead of easing into it. We need to continue to make sure that the patients get the services they need and the providers get the payments that they deserve. And so, the state-run system of the past was a fee for service, and now the MCO says you only need this service. So that's where the disparity comes in. And I think that we have made progress. It certainly had some bumpy roads for several years. It's not a perfect system, but as you've seen, states across the country are going to this. It's a system that we have, and we need to continue to make it better.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. We'll go on to the next question then. In Iowa, most of the services for persons with intellectual disabilities or mental illnesses are funded by Medicaid. And obviously, as you guys have brought up, within that service sector is a growing crisis level shortage of caregiver staff. Would you support a Medicaid rate increase that is targeted to raising the wages of caregiver staff for this service sector? If not, why not?
I think it's the same answer almost as I had to the last question. I'm definitely open to it, especially when there's a shortage. I know I've had several conversations with Bob Artles at Hope Haven. What a wonderful place. I hold, those people near and dear to my heart. When I was a teacher, it was something that I prided myself on. I was a teacher for 5 years and administrator for 10 years. And so we need to continue making sure that they have the workers that they can to meet the needs of these people. It's one of our top priorities, one of my top priorities, and it's something that I have promised Bob that, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'll continue to work with him in a very positive manner. So yes, I'm very open to that.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Courtney.
Brian, what was that question again, please?
Yeah, I'll read it again. In Iowa, most services for persons with intellectual disabilities or mental illness are funded by Medicaid. Within that service sector, there is a growing crisis level shortage of caregiver staff. Would you support a Medicaid rate increase that is targeted to raising the wages of caregiver staff for this service sector? If not, why not?
Certainly I would. And this goes into an area that's actually I've worked on for many years. When the Medicaid system was changed so that we went to the private companies that take care of Medicaid and take care of these patients in Iowa, the governor said we'd save $50 million the first year. I think the first year it cost us a couple $100 million, and I think it cost us several $100 million. I think years after that, and I had a lot of calls from a lot of folks that said they weren't able to give the care to these people, to these people that needed it. Hospitals are not getting the reimbursements. Nursing homes are not getting the reimbursements. It takes, I think the old system, Tim says the old system was old and maybe not any good. The old system was working fine. Could never figure out why Governor Branstad changed it unilaterally, went around the legislature and changed it. I never could understand that. I don't know what his goal was, but what happened was he made a lot of folks go through a lot of grief. The care isn't as good as it was. Some caregivers aren't getting paid at all. The hospital here, the local hospital, will tell you they're about $7 million behind in reimbursements. Many nursing homes will tell you the same thing. They're way behind in reimbursements. I think that it was a flawed system. What I would do, honestly, maybe not go back to the old system, but what I would do is sit down with a bipartisan group of legislators and maybe bring the hospitals in, bring nursing homes in, and try to work out something that actually would work. These people are in desperate straits, and they need help, and we need to make a serious effort at working on that. In the beginning, it was too much about money, saving money and all that, and I think it needs to be more about taking care of people.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Courtney. And then this next question goes to you. Again, our local law enforcement professionals have repeatedly raised the concern that the penalties for repeated unlawful carry of a firearm are mere slaps on the wrist. Would you support enhancing this penalty under Section 724.4, the unlawful carrying of a weapon, to a Class D felony for repeat violations to aid law enforcement in removing illegal weapons from neighborhoods? Why or why not?
I think I've always supported that, Brian. I know that Sheriff Johnstone brought it up to me several years ago, and I think I've always supported that. The problem is, in Des Moines, when you start talking anything at all about guns, the lobby comes down like a herd of buffalo. You don't get to do anything because the lobby hammers, they're afraid you're going to touch gun rights. I don't believe in touching gun rights. I'm a gun owner myself. I have lots of guns in my house. I have a permit to carry. I believe in the Second Amendment. But if you try to make adjustments, the gun lobby in this state is just all over you. When I get back to the legislature, I think we'll try it again. But I don't know if the votes are there. I don't know if the votes will be there to do that. But it's something that should be done. I know that Kevin Glendenning feels it should be done. I think that it's something we should work on and try to get done.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. Mr. Goodwin?
Yeah, so I've talked quite a bit about this issue. I was at the original press conference here at this building back in the spring of 18 when Chief Beard was still involved, and I had conversations with him. I had conversations with Major Grimshaw. I've had conversations with Chief Kramer, now former Chief Kramer. It's something that has been a focal point of my platform when I'm out talking with voters about the crime in Burlington and crime in Southeast Iowa and crime in general. So absolutely, I would support it. Like I said, I've been part of this process. I've been part of these conversations. And right now with the Republican-controlled legislature, I think that there is a possibility that there's something that can move on this right now. And so I've had conversations with Senate leadership. It's important down here to Southeast Iowans. It's important to our law enforcement community, who I support 100%. A lot of these guys are some of my greatest friends. And I would support enhancing this to a Class D felony, whether it's on the second or third time, much as like the graduated offense of a DUI or OWI as well. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goodwin. And now we have a couple of questions from the Hawkeye. The first question will go to Mr. Goodwin. I'll let the Hawkeye ask the question. They probably need to unmute.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. What do you believe will be what do you anticipate will be a major theme of the 2021 legislative session?
Mr. Goodwin, you go first.
Yeah, I think it's got to be just our response to the coronavirus pandemic, whether it's financial or whether it's with our schools. Our state's certainly no stranger to adversity and challenge. And, I think right now we're doing everything that we can, to help continue to slow the spread, and all without government mandates and interventions. And that's something that, is important for people. It's important for people in Iowa. So we've got to continue to be diligent in our fight against the coronavirus pandemic, with a balance of not shutting down our economy and not shutting down our school systems, and learning to live with it, because it's going to be here, with or without a vaccine. And so as progress is made on that, it's something, like I said, that we're going to have to be diligent about. But I think the economic recovery in 2021, coming off this pandemic in 2020 and into 2021, is going to be at the forefront of any legislation.
Okay. Mr. Courtney.
I believe healthcare is going to be the number one issue with this upcoming legislative season. I believe the COVID makes that necessary. I believe healthcare ties in so much with education. It ties in with jobs. Healthcare ties in with everything, and I think the COVID makes that even more so. The COVID is affecting the schools. A lot of things are going to have to be done to straighten out the problems in the schools, and I think we can do that. But I think that will be the number one issue with healthcare, and as you go into healthcare, you go into all the other issues. So that's what I think the legislature will spend their time on. I'm sure a lot of other things will come up that they want to spend time on. But in my view, as always, healthcare, jobs, and education are the three most important things in the state. And I believe that those will be the three things that get hit hardest right away.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. And the next question from the Hawkeye will go to you first.
In the prior legislative session, the legislature attempted to ban flags from flying above public buildings if they were not either a federal, state, local, or the POW/MIA flag. Would you like to see this bill reintroduced and passed? Why or why not?
The only flags, I say that again, the only flags that would be allowed to be the United States flag, the state flag, and the POW flag?
Federal, state, local, and the POW flag.
I agree with that legislation, and I believe I would have voted for it. I always hesitate to say that until I see the legislation, because I don't know what else was in it. But if that's all that was in it, I think it would be good legislation. I think I'd be in favor of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Courtney. Mr. Goodwin?
Well, this is probably the first time Tom and I will agree, but I would agree with everything you said, yes. It's a simple answer.
Okay, very good. All right, well then the next question is our last question. And as we continue in our rotation, Tim, we'll go with you on this one. Tourism is an economic driver for Greater Burlington and the state of Iowa, averaging $9 billion annually for the state. How do you grow and sustain the tourism industry for Greater Burlington and statewide?
Well, it's certainly more of a challenge now than ever. I think one of the things that hopefully we'll be able to bring up again this year is the Invest in Iowa plan. Again, I think I was in the spring, a similar question came up in a forum, and I believe that I was, misquoted as saying I didn't support the Invest in Iowa Act. What I actually said was that I didn't think it had any traction this year with the pandemic. And so as long as it'll lower our overall tax liability, I'm in favor of the 1 cent. And out of that 1 cent, 3/8 of that cent would go to fund the Outdoor Trust Fund that was voted in by the legislature and by the people of Iowa back in, I believe, 2010. And so, having tourism, we live on a river. We need to take advantage of being a river town. I know being able to work with the city, being able to work with the county. I know the city's got a lot going on with the Tiger Grant right now. Being able to revitalize the downtown is important as well, and continuing to have those public-private partnerships and being able to bring people in. We have a wonderful facility in the Recplex, and and we have the turf facility. And so continuing to market those great entities that Southeast Iowa and Burlington more specifically has is a way to do that. It certainly has been a challenge. We know funding is low right now, but it needs to be a part of the conversation moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Courtney.
Tourism's a tough one for Iowa, especially during this COVID thing where you can't show your face and it's hard to sit down in a restaurant and eat and that kind of thing. But it's always been a little tough for Iowa. We don't have any mountains and we don't have any deserts and we don't have any big attractions, but we do have this wonderful river. This is in the middle of summer when the corn's green and everything's green in Iowa. It's just a wonderful place to live. I have a lot of friends from out of state that say they enjoy coming to Iowa and touring up and down the river. I think the state needs to make that as easy as possible for folks to do. We're helping some with bike trails around the state, and especially around this district, this Senate district. A lot of bike trails are being built, financed by counties and cities. I think that helps a lot. I think there's a great future in tourism for Iowa. And I think as global climate change becomes more and more into the forefront, I think you're going to see Iowa be a more comfortable place to live maybe than places that are right now tourist areas. I think Iowa's going to be considered a more mild climate possibly because they're going to get hotter. So that's not a good thing for me to say, but I think that could happen for Iowa, at least for tourism. So I guess that's what I think. I think the state spends a certain amount of money. In fact, we get criticized. I probably will this year. We get criticized all the time for flower pots or something and all that stuff. That was all part of grants to small towns to help build their tourism. They wanted it. I know it's Burlington in their Tiger grant. They're putting some flower pots there, so I suppose somebody will get criticized for that down the road too. But those are the things that cities wanted to help make their city beautiful and to welcome people from out of the state and out of the town and out of the state into their communities. And I'm all in favor of that. I think it's really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. And now we will go to the closing statements, and we will go ahead with you, Mr. Courtney, to make your 2-minute closing statement.
Once again, I want to thank the partnership for having this forum. I'm running for election to the Iowa Senate because I know we can make Iowa a better place. We can fix the healthcare issues. We can fix education issues. We can bring more jobs to this area. And we can get through this COVID crisis. I'm Tom Courtney, and I want to be your state senator. I have the experience to work across the aisle to deal with all the tough issues that face our state. Please vote for me on November 3rd, either by absentee ballot, which I consider totally safe, or at the polls. Together, we can make Iowa the state it once was. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. And Mr. Goodwin, 2-minute closing statement.
Yeah, thank you. In my opening statement, you heard why I was running for this seat, and now you will hear why I believe I'm the best man for the job. Let's start with my work experience. I worked in professional sports for 2 NBA franchises. I was a teacher and school administrator for 15 years. I worked in private business here in town, and now I'm self-employed. Our biggest issue during and after this pandemic is getting Iowans back to work, but it's only the first step. I want to help our state grow and create more opportunities for everyone. I want to lower the overall tax burden on hardworking Iowans so you can keep more money in your pocket. Having a seat at the table in a Republican-controlled legislature and being a part of the decision-making process will be very beneficial for Southeast Iowans. I hang my hat on experience as an educator. Now more than ever, teachers and parents in Southeast Iowa need a voice at the Capitol during these uncertain and trying times. As I knock on doors in Senate District 44, all anyone wants to talk about is education. Again, having a seat at the table will be an extension of not only the voice of parents, teachers, and administrators, but the taxpayers as well. Education is the largest expense in the state budget, but it's also the most important for the future of our state. If we take nothing else away from this pandemic, take away this. We all know how difficult it was and is to try and help educate our students at home. And if we took our teachers for granted, we certainly don't now. They deserve our support. I asked some of my friends for descriptors when they think of me, and what they said was professional, common sense, natural leader, fair-minded, and resourceful, to name a few, and I would add visible and accessible, which are all very important when electing local officials. Southeast Iowa needs a leader in Des Moines who is respected, well-spoken, and who will work on your behalf. At the end of the day, we may disagree on some policy, but your voice will be heard. I am ready for the new challenge, and now is the time to move Southeast Iowa forward. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd or by absentee ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Thank you both, Mr. Courtney and Mr. Goodwin, for your time today. I want to express our appreciation to each of you for being willing to serve in our citizen legislature. And I would like to also thank those in the audience for your interest in the election process, and thank the Greater Burlington Partnership for hosting this and for the Hawkeye for sponsoring. So with that, good day.